The microphone slipped from Steve Harvey's hand, hitting the studio floor with a metallic echo that seemed to silence the entire world. In 40 years of television, through every unexpected answer and shocking revelation, Steve had never been rendered completely speechless. But standing there under the bright studio lights, facing a 16-year-old boy with Down syndrome and eyes full of innocent wonder, Steve Harvey discovered that some questions don't have answers. They have truths that shake you to your core. It started as just another Tuesday taping at the Family Feud studios in Atlanta. The energy was electric, as it always was. Two families stood ready to compete, the Morrison family from Tennessee and the Patterson family from Ohio. The audience was buzzing with anticipation. Cameras were rolling, and Steve was in his element. That perfectly tailored charcoal suit, that million-dollar smile, working the crowd with his signature blend of humor and warmth. But in the Patterson family lineup stood someone who would change everything. Danny Patterson, 16 years old, with sandy brown hair and the kind of radiant smile that could light up the darkest room, bounced excitedly at his family's podium. His bright blue eyes sparkled with pure joy as he took in the studio lights, the cameras, the audience. To Danny, this wasn't just a game show. This was magic. Beside him stood Carol Patterson, 52, with graying hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and hands that told the story of 16 years of tireless devotion. She wore her best dress, a navy blue one she'd owned for over a decade, but saved for special occasions. Her eyes never left Danny, watching his every expression, ready to help if he needed it. Protective in the way only a mother can be. During the family introductions, Steve had noticed something special about Danny immediately. The boy's enthusiasm was infectious, his happiness genuine and unfiltered. When Steve knelt down to Danny's level, something he always did with younger contestants, Danny had surprised him with an unexpected hug. "I love you, Mr. Steve," Danny had declared with the kind of pure honesty that only comes from a heart that knows no pretense. "You make people happy." The audience had melted instantly. Even the camera operators, who'd seen thousands of contestants come in through those doors, found themselves smiling behind their equipment. Steve had been charmed, as everyone always was, by Danny's genuine spirit. The game progressed normally through the first few rounds. The Patterson family was holding their own against the Morrisons, with Danny's aunt, uncle, and cousin providing steady answers while Carol guided Danny gently through each moment. Danny clapped enthusiastically for every correct answer, whether from his family or the opposing team. His joy was contagious, filling the studio with an energy that transcended competition. But during the fourth round, everything changed. The category seemed innocent enough. Name something that makes you feel safe. Carol stepped up to the podium, her usual calm demeanor intact, as she prepared to answer for her family. "Survey says," Steve announced with his trademark enthusiasm, "name something that makes you feel safe." Carol paused, looking back at Danny, who was watching her with complete trust and admiration. Something in that moment, perhaps the weight of 16 years of single parenthood, perhaps the exhaustion she never allowed herself to show, perhaps simply the overwhelming love she felt for her son, caused her carefully constructed composure to crack. "My son's happiness," she whispered into the microphone, her voice breaking slightly. It wasn't on the board. The buzzer sounded. But something about the way she'd said it, the emotion behind those three simple words, made Steve pause. The studio audience, who had been cheering and laughing moments before, fell silent as they sensed something profound happening. Steve looked at Carol, then at Danny, then back at Carol. His comedian's instincts told him to keep the energy up, make a joke, move the game forward. But his father's heart told him something else entirely. This wasn't just a game show answer. This was a confession, a truth so deep it had escaped without permission. "Hold on," Steve said, raising his hand to signal the production team. "Hold on just a minute." The cameras kept rolling, but everyone in the studio understood that the script had just been thrown out the window. Steve walked over to the Patterson family podium, his attention focused entirely on Carol and Danny. Mrs. Patterson, Steve said gently, that wasn't just an answer, was it? That was something else. Carol looked down, trying to compose herself, but the dam had already broken. 16 years of held-back tears, of sleepless nights, of choosing Danny's needs over her own, without ever once regretting it, came flooding to the surface. "I'm sorry," she whispered, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Someone from the crew had quickly provided. "I don't know why I said that. When I look at him." She gestured toward Danny, who was watching this exchange with growing concern for his mother's tears. That's when Danny did something that would be replayed millions of times on social media. Something that would be talked about in homes across America. Something that would remind the world what pure love looks like. Danny left his position at the podium and walked over to his mother. With the gentle tenderness that only comes from a heart that has never learned cruelty, he reached up and wiped the tears from Carol's face. "Don't cry, Mommy," he said softly, but his voice carried across the silent studio. "Are you sad because I'm not winning?" The question hit Carol like a physical blow. Here was her son, her beautiful, pure-hearted son, thinking he was the reason for her tears. The irony was almost unbearable. Danny was the source of every joy in her life. Yet he was worried he was disappointing her.
"Oh, sweetheart," Carol said, dropping to one knee so she could look Danny in the eyes. "You're not losing. You could never lose. You're perfect exactly as you are."
But Danny, with the innocent wisdom that sometimes comes with his condition, asked the question that would stop not just the game, but every heart in that studio. "Mommy," he said, his voice filled with genuine curiosity, "am I the reason you don't have a husband? Is that why you're always tired?" The silence that followed was deafening. Carol's face went white. The audience collectively held its breath. Even the production crew, seasoned professionals who had seen every possible scenario, found themselves wiping their eyes. Steve Harvey, the man who had built a career on having the perfect response to any situation, stood frozen. In that moment, he wasn't a game show host or a comedian. He was a father, a man who understood sacrifice, a human being witnessing a conversation between a mother and son that was too sacred for television, yet too important not to share. Carol's composure finally shattered completely. "Danny," she whispered, her voice breaking, "you're not why anything is missing from my life. You're why everything is perfect in my life." But Danny, with the relentless honesty of youth, pressed on. "But Jennifer's mommy has a daddy for Jennifer, and Tommy's mommy goes to movies sometimes. You never go anywhere without me. Did I break something?" It was then that Steve Harvey made a decision that would define not just that episode, but his entire legacy as a host. He walked over to Danny and knelt down, placing his hands gently on the boy's shoulders. "Danny," Steve said, his voice gentler than anyone in that studio had ever heard it, "can I ask you something?" Danny nodded eagerly, always excited to answer questions. "Do you think your mommy loves you?" "Oh yes." Danny's face lit up immediately. "She loves me so much. She makes me pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse, and she reads to me every night, and she learns all the songs from my favorite movies, so we can sing together." Steve felt his own eyes beginning to water. "And do you love your mommy?" "She's the best mommy in the whole world," Danny declared without hesitation. "She's like an angel. She takes care of everybody. She helps Mrs. Jenkins next door with her groceries. And she always gives money to the man on the street corner. Danny paused, as if realizing he was sharing something special. "She never gets mad at me, even when I break things or forget my words." Steve looked up at Carol, who was crying openly now. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, "how long has it been just you and Danny?" 16 years, Carol whispered. "His father left when Danny was born. He said he couldn't handle a defective child." The word came out like it still hurts to say. "So it's been just us. And in 16 years, have you ever regretted it? Ever wished things were different?" Carol's answer came without hesitation. "Never, Not once. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. Yes, it's been hard. Yes, I've been tired. Yes, I've had to make sacrifices. But loving Danny has never been a sacrifice. It's been the greatest privilege of my life. Danny, who had been listening intently, suddenly wrapped his arms around both Steve and his mother. See, Mr. Steve? I told you she was an angel. That's when Steve Harvey did something unprecedented in the history of Family Feud. He stood up, looked directly into the main camera, and addressed not just the studio audience, but every viewer who would ever watch this moment. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction, I want you to look at something special. This is Carol Patterson. For 16 years, she has loved this young man with a devotion that most of us can only dream of. She's worked 2 jobs, sacrificed her social life, put her son's needs before her own every single day, and she's raised someone who sees the world with pure joy and love. He turned back to Danny and Carol. And Danny, your mommy doesn't need a husband to be complete. She doesn't need anything else, because she has something better than most people ever find. She has unconditional love, given and received. The studio erupted in applause. But it wasn't the typical game show cheering. It was something deeper, more reverent. It was the sound of 300 people, recognizing something sacred. But Steve wasn't finished. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. From it, he extracted a business card and handed it to Carol. Mrs. Patterson, that's my personal number. And I want you to know something. You're not alone anymore. This family here, he gestured to the Morrison family, who had abandoned their competitive stance and were openly crying. They're your family now. Everyone in this studio, everyone watching at home, we're all your family now. Then Steve did something that would become legendary in game show history. He took off his suit jacket, the same lucky jacket he'd worn for hundreds of episodes, and placed it around Carol's shoulders. You've been carrying everything alone for too long, he said. From now on, you've got help. The episode ended not with a winner or loser, but with both families embracing, with Danny leading everyone in singing You Are My Sunshine, his mother's favorite song, and with the understanding that sometimes television captures something more important than entertainment. 6 months later, Carol received a call from a local businessman who had seen the episode. He offered her a better-paying job with flexible hours. A single mother from the audience started a support group for special needs families. Danny became a local celebrity, spreading joy wherever he went. But the most important change was in Carol herself. For the first time in 16 years, she accepted help. She joined community groups, made friends, and discovered that loving Danny didn't mean she had to do everything alone. And Steve Harvey? He learned the most powerful moments in television happen when the cameras capture not what's scripted, but what's true. Danny's question that day reminded everyone watching that love isn't about what we sacrifice, it's about what we choose, again and again, with grateful hearts. Because sometimes, the most beautiful love stories don't need perfect circumstances. They just need people brave enough to love completely, like a mother who never saw her son's differences as deficits, and a boy who taught the world that angels don't need wings. Sometimes they just need tired hands and hearts full of endless love.